Mommy, why are those men putting handcuffs on that soldier lady? The little girl's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Her mother didn't answer. How do you explain to a child that a black woman in uniform still isn't safe? It was just after 7:30 a.m. when Sergeant Naomi Brooks pulled into the Sinclair gas station on Morse Road in Gahanna, Ohio. The morning was crisp. Her dark green 2014 Toyota RAV4 rolled to a stop beside pump number 4. She hadn't eaten yet, hadn't slept well either, but her drill weekend at the Whitehall Reserve Base wasn't going to wait. 12 years in the Army Reserve had taught her many things: order, resilience, the power of presence. And in that moment, as she stepped out in full uniform, boots laced tight, name patch gleaming above her heart, she wasn't just another woman at the pump. She was a symbol of discipline, of duty, of something. Two officers in a white Chevy Tahoe decided they didn't believe. Officer Rick Dalton spotted her first. He was tall, buzz-cut, mid-30s, with the swagger of someone who mistook suspicion for intuition. In the passenger seat sat Officer Greg Sutter, older, bulkier, silent behind reflective sunglasses. From 2 pumps over, Dalton leaned in and muttered something. Sutter shrugged. Naomi didn't notice them at first. She had just inserted her card at the pump, scrolling through a text from her mom, like she always did before the drill. A quick, "Be safe," a heart emoji. Naomi smiled, replying with a thumbs up before tearing open a protein bar. That's when she heard it. "Excuse me, ma'am?" She turned. "Yes, officer?" Dalton stepped forward, all authority and no warmth. "Mind stepping away from the vehicle?" Her eyebrows furrowed. Is something wrong?" "Step away. Now." The shift in tone was sharp, cold. The kind of tone not born from protocol, but prejudice. Naomi's stomach tightened, but she complied. Slowly, palms visible. Sutter remained by the Tahoe, arms crossed, eyes scanning. Dalton moved in. "You got ID?" She nodded, calm. "Of course, I'm Sergeant Naomi Brooks, Army Reserve, on my way to base." She pulled out both her military ID and driver's license, extending them with steady hands. Dalton barely glanced. He looked her dead in the eye and said, "This uniform ain't a Halloween costume." Naomi's jaw tensed. "I didn't say it was," she answered, voice low. "You asked for ID. I gave you ID." "We got a call. Said someone was loitering and acting suspicious," Dalton replied, brushing past her credentials. "Just doing our job." She turned slightly, searching Sutter's face for reason. Nothing. Just mirrored lenses and indifference. "You sure this ID's legit?" Dalton asked. Naomi blinked. "Are you suggesting I'm impersonating military personnel?" Dalton didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Her heart skipped. "Are you detaining me?" His voice rose. "You're getting a lawful command. Turn around. Now." She glanced at Sutter again. He nodded. Not out of empathy, just confirmation. Naomi clenched her fists. "This is a mistake," she said coldly. "And it's going to cost you." Dalton yanked her arms back. The cuffs clicked shut. Too tight. On purpose, she winced. Across the lot, a voice shouted, "Hey, what the hell's she even doing? That's a soldier." She showed ID. Another voice, a woman in scrubs near the mini-mart entrance, pulled out her phone and started recording. Dalton turned his head. "Back off." But the crowd wasn't moving. People had noticed. And Naomi's mind wasn't on the cuffs or the pain. It was on one name, one number. Colonel James Carter. She was going to make that call. Inside the squad car, the vinyl back seat was stiff and reeking of sweat. Naomi sat upright, jaw clenched, wrists still bound. Her name tag was twisted, her dignity bruised but intact. Dalton strutted around her vehicle like he just made a big bust. Sutter, still silent, stood by the cruiser. Naomi raised her voice through the plexiglass. "I want to call my commanding officer." Dalton didn't look. "You'll get your call at the station." "That's not how this works," she said sharply. "Military protocol gives me the right to contact command when detained." Dalton finally turned. "You're under suspicion of impersonation. Federal offense. Sit tight." Naomi stared. "You looked at my ID, you saw my plates, my tags, and you still cuffed me. Why?" Dalton didn't answer. From the sidewalk, a child clutched her mother's hand, watching wide-eyed. "Is she in trouble?" she whispered. "No, baby," her mom said softly. "She shouldn't be." Back inside the cruiser, Naomi's voice was steady. "I want to make that call. Now." Sutter hesitated, then handed her phone through the slot. She unlocked it with her thumb and hit a single contact. It rang twice. "Naomi?" "Colonel Carter, I've been detained. Gahanna." Sinclair Station. They say I'm impersonating. I showed ID. Doesn't matter. There was a pause. Names? Not shown. 2 white male officers. SUV. No badge numbers given. I'm 5 minutes out. Don't move. Don't speak. Leave the line open. The call stayed connected. Sutter peered at her through the mirror. Your lawyer? Naomi didn't answer. But across the street, Patrice, the woman in scrubs, was live streaming. Dozens of people were watching. One of them was a rookie officer named Daniel Reyes, sitting in his cruiser on the next block. He saw the scene. He saw the uniform. And something didn't sit right. Dispatch, this is Unit 19. I'm diverting. I need to verify something. And just like that, the tide quietly began to turn. I'm 5 minutes out. Don't move. Don't speak. Leave the line open. That was all Colonel James Carter said. And when a man like that speaks like that, it's already too late for the other side. Inside the cruiser, Sergeant Naomi Brooks sat still, spine straight despite the burning in her wrists. The phone was tucked awkwardly between her shoulder and jaw, still connected. Colonel Carter didn't need to speak again. His silence carried more weight than most men's anger. Outside, the scene was shifting. More cars had pulled into the Sinclair gas station, not for gas, not for coffee, for her. People were filming. A man in a delivery van angled his dash cam toward the patrol car. A woman in a red hoodie stood beside Pump 6, whispering rapidly into her phone. The moment had started to crystallize into something else, something bigger than a parking lot arrest. Officer Dalton was pacing now, the swagger replaced with nervous motion. He glanced back at Naomi, then turned toward Officer Sutter, snapping under his breath. We're getting heat out here. Somebody's already streaming this on Facebook. Sutter's jaw tightened. We should have called for backup earlier. Backup for what? A woman in uniform? She wasn't supposed to push back, Sutter muttered. She didn't. That's the problem. Dalton pulled out his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 45. We've got a developing situation. Civilian interference. Requesting immediate assistance. From the opposite curb, Rookie Officer Daniel Reyes had parked his own cruiser without drawing attention. He hadn't made contact. Not yet. But he'd been recording. Naomi's voice came through the phone again. Colonel, one of the officers just requested backup. They're saying I'm creating a situation. Let them. It'll make the video that much clearer, Carter replied. We've got eyes on the traffic cam already. I'm escalating to the city's civilian review board. Thank you, sir. You holding steady? Yes, sir. Good, let them bury themselves. At that very moment, inside a local newsroom, editor Reina Cortez clicked refresh on her trending feed. Wait, what's this? A 45-second clip was going viral. Naomi, in full camo, hands cuffed behind her back, calmly stating her name and ID, while a white officer ignored her. Reina's eyes narrowed. She hit play again. No yelling, no aggression, just a calm soldier, and 2 cops who didn't care. We've got something, Rat, she said aloud. Military woman cuffed at a gas station. No probable cause. In uniform. A producer across the room looked up. Confirmed? Working on it. Go, now. Back at the gas station, Officer Reyes stepped out of his cruiser at last. He approached slowly, hands open. Sirs, he said evenly, addressing both Dalton and Sutter. I was nearby, saw the crowd. Just wanted to check. Has she been identified? Dalton scowled. Handled. Understood. I just wanted to ask, respectfully, if the military ID was verified before detainment. Sutter stiffened. She was suspicious. Is there a report of impersonation on file, or is it based on the initial call? No answer. Reyes' body cam was rolling, and more importantly, so was his private recorder, clipped just inside his jacket collar. Dalton barked. We don't need input, Rookie. Apologies, sir, Reyes replied. Just ensuring protocols followed. He turned and walked back, but not before glancing at Naomi, still seated in the cruiser. She met his eyes, and for a brief moment, she knew. Someone inside the system was watching too. Colonel Carter's second call was not polite. This is Colonel James Carter. I need the location and badge numbers for officers currently engaged in detaining a military service member at Sinclair Station, Gahanna. Confirmed vehicle. White Chevy Tahoe. The dispatcher stuttered. Sir, I'm not authorized to. You don't need to be authorized, you need to verify. Or I'll call your chief, or the base commander, or the mayor's liaison. Choose fast. A pause. Then, stand by. Within 3 minutes, Carter's email inbox buzzed. Subject, urgent, cam footage pull request, Sinclair Station. But the footage is uploading now. Timestamp begins at 7:34 a.m. The trooper made no verbal warning. Immediate physical restraint applied. No verbal aggression from detainee visible. That was all Carter needed. He opened his third app, Twitter. And there she was, his goddaughter, cuffed, in full uniform, face calm, shoulders square. Even in chains, she was the composed one. Idiots, he muttered. The clip hit 12,000 views in the next 10 minutes. By 10:12 a.m., the number doubled, and then tripled. Back on the scene, Dalton slammed the cruiser door shut again, grumbling. We're losing control. Sutter rubbed his temples. We lost it the moment we ignored her tags. Naomi, through the plexiglass, said softly, I warned you. This was going to cost you. Dalton whirled. You don't get to lecture me. I don't have to, she cut in. You're doing a fine job proving my point. Inside a classroom 10 miles away, a government teacher paused her lesson. She connected her laptop to the projector and played the viral clip. Watch this, she said, and tell me why it happened, then tell me what justice looks like. 23 students sat frozen, and one girl, Alyssa Monroe, wrote something down quietly in her notebook. Even when you wear the uniform, they don't see you. They only see who they think you are. At 10:35 a.m., a city councilman received a forward from Carter. Attached 2 body cam screenshots, a timeline of events, and a formal escalation memo to Internal Affairs. And the subject line, military detention, violation of protocol, pending media firestorm. The fire had been lit. The question now wasn't if someone would pay, it was how many? Is that real? Yeah, and she's still cuffed. You're telling me they arrested a soldier in uniform? Keep watching, it gets worse. By noon, the 45-second clip that started as a shaky phone video was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, even daytime Facebook feeds that rarely saw anything more intense than dog videos and recipe hacks. But now, they were watching Sergeant Naomi Brooks. They saw her standing still, showing ID, and then being cuffed anyway. And something sharp had just posted the full security cam footage from the Sinclair station. It hit the internet like a lightning strike. Camera 5, exterior East Lot, 7:34 a.m. Naomi steps out of her car. She's wearing her uniform. She opens a protein bar. She's approached by Officer Dalton. Then, no hesitation, no escalation, just hands behind your back. Freeze frame, zoom, rewind. People weren't just watching. They were analyzing, dissecting, and sharing. And what do they see? She didn't do a damn thing wrong. He never even read her rights. Why is he smirking when he cuffs her? Inside the Gahanna Police Department, someone from IT was panicking. We've got civilian footage all over Twitter. Now, Sinclair's camera footage is online. Who had access? It wasn't us. Might have been someone from the military side. Are the body cams clean? Silence. Run it again, right now. Body cam footage, Officer Dalton, 7:38 a.m. The camera jolts as he opens the cruiser door. Naomi is already cuffed. Audio cuts for a second, static, and then picks up again. Dalton is off to the side, speaking low. You think she's one of those fake vets? Been getting a lot of those lately. Sutter chuckles. Doesn't matter. Real or not, she had an attitude. Let her cool off in the car. The room watching the footage went silent. We're so screwed, one internal affairs officer whispered. Meanwhile, back at the gas station, the damage had already been done. Reporters were now on site, cameras rolling, microphones out. Raina Cortez from Channel 7 had tracked down Patrice Ellison, the woman in scrubs who filmed the original clip. She held up her phone for the 3rd time that hour. She told them her name, showed ID, twice. They didn't care. He cuffed her like she was shoplifting or something. Did she resist? Not once. Not a twitch. She just kept saying, "This is a mistake." And then it hit the national wire. Breaking, black female soldier cuffed in uniform during morning stop in Ohio. Police refused to verify ID. Video goes viral. CNN, NBC, MSNBC. Even conservative outlets couldn't ignore the optics. Somewhere in a quiet suburban home, a retired Air Force major named Philip Gray watched the loop of Naomi being arrested. He shook his head, then called into a live broadcast. If that woman had been white, they wouldn't have gone near those cuffs. And every veteran watching this knows it. At the city mayor's office, phones were lighting up. "You need to see this, sir," an aide said, holding up a tablet. The mayor scrolled, paused, set the tablet down. "Call the chief, now." But not everyone was outraged. Some comments were ugly, predictable. She probably mouthed off. Bet she had a fake badge. Military or not, you follow police commands. but they were drowned out, buried by thousands of voices saying, "This is why people don't trust the badge." She served. They still saw her as a threat. Protect and serve by HO, exactly? Inside Naomi's apartment later that night, the silence was loud. She'd been released hours earlier. No charges, no apology, just released. She hadn't spoken to the press, she hadn't tweeted. She sat in her uniform, scrolling quietly through the thousands of messages. Some were from old friends, many from strangers, others from fellow soldiers, men and women she'd never met. 22 years in. Never thought I'd have to warn my daughter that even her uniform wouldn't protect her. You did what I couldn't. You stood still and didn't flinch. That's strength. One message was only 2 words. We see you. She stared at that one the longest. Back at the station, Officer Rise submitted his private recording. In it, his voice was clear. She had an ID. They didn't even scan it. Didn't verify anything. They went straight to cuffs. I saw it with my own eyes. He paused the playback. If this gets buried, I'm transferring out. Internal Affairs nodded. It won't be buried. Colonel Carter was already ahead of them. He'd submitted formal complaints to the Department of Justice, the military liaison, and state-level watchdogs. He attached security cam footage, body cam transcripts, civilian videos, testimonies from Reyes, Patrice, and 3 others. His cover memo read, "She wore the uniform, followed every rule, and they still saw a threat." But Carter wasn't done. That night, he appeared live on a regional news segment, not in uniform, but in full command. You don't need rank to recognize injustice. You need eyes and a spine. And I hope, for the city's sake, somebody inside Gehanna PD finds both. The anchor sat stunned. Viewers at home didn't blink. The city was now on fire. And Naomi? She was still silent. But her silence was louder than their shouting. And the cuffs, still bruising her wrists, were becoming a symbol. Not of weakness, but what happens when you refuse to vanish. They thought she was alone. They forgot who was watching, and who had been her, and who was still her. By the time the clock hit 4 p.m., the Sinclair gas station wasn't just a pit stop anymore. It was a landmark. People were stopping just to take pictures. Candles sat quietly on the concrete near Pump 4, where Naomi had once stood, stiff-backed and handcuffed. A laminated photo of her in uniform, taken from the viral clip, had been taped to the side of the pump, with 4 words written in black Sharpie. She served. You didn't. Across the city, Reina Cortez's report aired at 5 p.m. sharp. She wasn't just reciting headlines. She was showing America what they'd seen already, but framing it through context. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice. And it wasn't just about a uniform. It was about the refusal to see a black woman as a soldier, even when she stood right in front of them. At a local high school in Reynoldsburg, Mr. Landry, a U.S. government teacher, paused his lesson midway through Chapter 6, Civil Rights and Due Process. He walked to the front of the class, turned down the lights, and hit play. "We're not going to just talk about constitutional rights today," he said. "We're going to watch what happens when people pretend they don't apply." The class watched Naomi being cuffed, replayed on screen. Several students shifted uncomfortably. One whispered, "That's today. This isn't history." In the back row, a junior named Alyssa Monroe stared at the screen, motionless. Her notebook lay open. On a blank page, she started to write. By evening, the clip had crossed 2 million views. Celebrities reposted it. Army veterans reposted it. Even a Medal of Honor recipient wrote, "If this happened to me in uniform, there'd be hell to pay. So why wasn't there?" At City Hall, the walls were closing in. The mayor's team had held 2 back-to-back crisis meetings. The police chief sat stone-faced. One councilwoman slammed her folder on the table. "You want to let this blow over? This isn't a social media trend. This is what your department allowed." They were following up on a call, the chief offered flatly. They had her ID, she was in uniform. What more did they need? No one answered. That night, veterans organized a candlelight vigil in front of the reserve base. No signs, no speeches, just quiet. Dozens of them, men and women, white, black, Latino, Asian, standing shoulder to shoulder, boots polished, eyes steady. Each one held a candle. At the center of the group, a retired sergeant held a folded flag in his arms. "We've been silent long enough," he said softly. "Tonight, we stand for her because she stood for us." Naomi didn't attend. She stayed in her apartment, phone off, lights low. But she saw the vigil on the news, and for the first time in 2 days, she cried, not because of the injustice, but because of the quiet power in all those people who hadn't forgotten her. Meanwhile, Officer Daniel Reyes, the rookie who'd stood up earlier, received a message on his department email. Subject, transfer request, denied pending review. Attached was a note from a higher-up, "We're watching you." He read it, then smiled. "Good, keep watching." And quietly, he forwarded the internal body cam clip to 3 reporters. Back at school, Alyssa Monroe stayed late in the library. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. The title of her piece? "The Uniform Isn't Enough, but Her Courage Is." She submitted it to the Ohio State Civic Essay Competition. She didn't expect to win. She just wanted someone to read it. At the Gahanna Police Department, the cracks had turned to fractures. One anonymous officer had leaked an internal thread, text messages between Dalton and another patrolman. In it, Dalton had written, she was being uppity, thought the uniform gave her a pass. That word, uppity, was all it took. The city's black council members saw it. The media saw it. Internal Affairs had no choice. Inside his home office, Colonel James Carter was still working. He hadn't slept more than 4 hours in 2 days. But that didn't matter, because when a soldier is under attack, you don't sleep until she's safe. He had drafted a new letter. It was addressed to the Department of Defense, the Ohio Attorney General, the National Guard Bureau, and the Congressional Subcommittee on Law Enforcement Oversight. In the subject line, he typed, "Systemic failure to protect service member, case Naomi Brooks." At 11:38 p.m., Naomi received a message on Instagram. She almost didn't open it. But something about the name looked familiar. Alyssa Monroe writes, inside was a screenshot of a typed essay and a note. "You don't know me, but I'm 17, and I saw you. I saw how you didn't yell, how you stood still, how you let them show who they really were. And I want you to know, I've never felt more proud to be a black girl in America. They tried to erase you. You made them visible instead." Naomi sat in silence. Then she picked up a pen. She didn't respond online. She wrote a letter, the kind you fold once and slide into an envelope. "Dear Alyssa, you have no idea what your words did for me tonight. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel brave. I just felt necessary. Maybe that's what courage is, not wanting to stand there but knowing you must. I hope you never forget that your voice is a weapon too. Keep writing. Keep fighting. Sergeant Naomi Brooks." She placed the letter beside her boots. Tomorrow she'd mail it. But tonight, she let herself breathe. At some point, silence isn't neutrality, it's permission. And Gahanna had been silent long enough. Inside the Gahanna Police Department, the walls no longer echoed with confidence. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and tension. The chief of police, in his 4th decade on the force, sat at the head of the table, arms folded, eyes bloodshot. To his left, Deputy Chief Morales tapped a pen against his notepad, not because he was nervous, but because he was furious. "We need to act. Now," Morales said. "We've got every local outlet breathing down our necks. National news is watching. DOJ is watching. The Pentagon is watching." The chief tried to sound composed. "We're conducting a full internal review. I'm not making personnel decisions based on a trending video." Morales didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "It's not a video. It's 5. From 3 angles, with body cam audio confirming misconduct and racial bias. This isn't a decision anymore. It's survival." Meanwhile, Channel 7's Reina Cortez was live downtown, standing in front of City Hall, flanked by over 100 community members, most of them silent, some holding signs. "Fire Dalton Sutter uniform equals respect. She protected us. Who protected her?" Reina looked straight into the camera. "It's been 72 hours since Sergeant Naomi Brooks was handcuffed while wearing the uniform of the United States Army Reserve. And tonight, this city faces a choice: accountability or avoidance, justice or just another headline." Back in the station, officers Dalton and Sutter were summoned separately. Dalton was first. He walked in like he owned the room, swagger intact, shirt sleeves rolled, no hint of remorse. The Internal Affairs lead, a black woman named Letcher Ava Caldwell, didn't blink. "Officer Dalton, you are being placed on immediate unpaid suspension pending termination for the following: failure to verify identification, improper detainment of a verified service member, disregard of racial bias protocols, conduct unbecoming of a law enforcement officer." Dalton scoffed. "This is political theater." "No, Caldwell replied. This is policy. Dalton stood, tossed the paper back on the table. Good luck replacing me with someone woke enough for you. Caldwell didn't even flinch. We don't need someone woke. We need someone conscious. Next came Officer Sutter. He sat quietly, didn't speak, didn't argue. He signed the termination form with a slow hand. When asked if he had anything to say, he simply muttered, "Didn't think it'd go this far." Latner Caldwell stared at him. It always goes this far. The question is whether anyone notices. The news broke by 4:15 p.m. Breaking. Officers Dalton and Sutter terminated in wake of viral arrest of Army reservist. The city's social media feeds exploded. Some celebrated. Some claimed the department caved to pressure. But most just said, finally. Long overdue. That's a start. Across town, in a quiet kitchen, Naomi Brooks stood by the stove, stirring gumbo. She hadn't spoken publicly. She hadn't stepped in front of a microphone. She didn't need to. Her phone lit up with messages. One from Colonel Carter. Confirmed. They're gone. Another from Officer Rise. Will do better. Promise. But the one that made her stop stirring came from an unknown number. Alyssa Monroe just won the state essay prize. She quoted you. Thought you should know. At Reynoldsburg High School, Alyssa stood awkwardly at the podium, a medal around her neck and a trembling note in her hands. I wrote this because I saw someone who didn't raise her voice, didn't fight back. Not because she couldn't, but because she knew it wasn't just about her. And somehow, that made her louder than anyone screaming. She wore the uniform, and they still tried to erase her. But she didn't disappear, she made them visible. The audience stood, applauded. And Alyssa? She scanned the back of the auditorium hoping, just maybe. But Naomi wasn't there. Instead, Naomi sat in the back of a small veterans community center, sipping lukewarm coffee with 5 older men and women who'd served in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. One of them leaned forward. You didn't want the spotlight, huh? Naomi shook her head. I just wanted gas. They chuckled. Another, an old man with a cane, smiled. Well, you got a legacy instead. The next day, the mayor held a press conference. Behind him stood the police chief, looking noticeably grayer, and a representative from the Army Reserve. This city does not tolerate racial bias or disrespect toward those who serve. Effective immediately, we are implementing the following measures. Mandatory retraining on identifying military credentials, civilian-military liaison positions at each precinct, a public oversight board with veteran representation. They called it the Brooks Protocol. Colonel Carter watched from the back of the room. Didn't clap, didn't nod, just watched. Because change, he knew, didn't come with statements. It came with systems that stay in place after the cameras leave. As for Naomi, she stayed home, turned off the news, folded her uniform with care, lined up her boots, sat quietly, until there was a knock on the door. She opened it to find Patrice Ellison, the woman in scrubs, holding a manila envelope. Hey, Patrice said softly, you don't know me, but I was there. I filmed it. I yelled. I'm not sure it helped, but this is a copy of the footage. I thought you should have it. Naomi took the envelope. Thank you, she said. You weren't alone, Patrice said. Naomi nodded. I know that now. She didn't post about it, didn't tweet it. She simply slid the envelope into a drawer. Because some battles don't end with applause, some end with a whisper. They picked a side, and this time, it wasn't the wrong one. The uniform didn't protect her. Her silence didn't shield her. But her stillness changed everything. 2 weeks later, the noise had quieted. The headlines had faded beneath newer ones, a celebrity scandal, a political meltdown, a sports championship. But for Sergeant Naomi Brooks, the silence wasn't a retreat. It was a choice. She was back at work, back at drill weekends, back on her 5:30 a.m. runs through streets that now felt just a little different. People looked at her longer now, some with admiration, some with guilt, a few with something between curiosity and resentment. Naomi didn't bother sorting them out, because for her, none of this was ever about being seen. It was about being respected. The envelope came on a Tuesday, plain white, no return address. Inside, a folded sheet of lined notebook paper, torn from a spiral. Crayon handwriting, purple ink, misspellings, but deliberate, careful. Dear Miss Naomi, I'm 8 and I saw the video. My mom said you were brave, but I think you were quite brave like my grandma. She says quiet bravery is the best kind. Thank you for not yelling even when they were mean. You still won. No name. Just a little drawing of a stick figure in a green uniform with a heart above her head. Naomi sat on the edge of her bed for a long time after that. Just breathing. At the precinct, Officer Daniel Reyes was pulled into a meeting with Internal Affairs. They told him they appreciated his cooperation. They offered him a commendation. He asked them to keep it off the record. Just retrain the next guy, he said. That's worth more than a plaque. He didn't become a hero. Didn't want to. He just stayed in the room when the easy thing was to leave. And that mattered. In Cincinnati, Naomi visited her godmother for the weekend, made gumbo for a group of neighborhood kids who'd never had it before. One girl, shy and serious, asked, "Are you the soldier from the video?" Naomi smiled. "I'm a soldier." "Yeah. Did they say sorry?" She stirred the pot and replied softly, "Not really, but the system did." The girl nodded, not fully understanding, but understanding enough. Letters came in waves now, from young recruits, from veterans, from single moms, from teachers, from women who had never worn a uniform but had worn the same burden. One, from a Navy medic named Camila, stood out. "I used to think that speaking up meant shouting. You showed me that sometimes standing still is speaking up. Thank you for not letting them erase you." Colonel James Carter had flown out to D.C. for a Pentagon meeting the day Naomi stopped by his house with a small envelope and a six-pack of his favorite coffee blend. She left the package on his porch with a note. "For every time you didn't sleep when I needed you to stay awake. N." He found it later that night and said only one word: respect. The Brooks Protocol had taken effect quietly across the state. Now, officers were required to take a mandatory course in military ID verification. New recruits had to sit through a training video featuring actual footage of Naomi's arrest, paired with commentary from both police instructors and Army liaisons. Some grumbled. Most didn't. But now and then, someone would speak up after the video ended. How did we let that happen? And that's exactly why it was shown. At a university in Dayton, Alyssa Monroe was invited to read her essay at a civic conference. Afterward, a man in uniform approached her. "That woman you wrote about, Sergeant Brooks," he said. "Has she ever written you back?" Alyssa smiled. "She didn't post it online, but yeah, she sent me a letter." She reached into her folder and pulled out the page. "I read it every time I wonder if it's worth saying something." Naomi never went public. She didn't join the interviews, didn't write op-eds, didn't sign book deals, didn't post hashtags. She just lived. And somehow, that was the loudest statement of all. One Saturday, while driving through Gahanna, Naomi stopped at the Sinclair station. She hadn't returned since the incident. Pump 4 was empty. She pulled in, filled up in silence. No one said anything. No stares. Just a quiet nod from the clerk behind the glass window. As she was about to leave, she noticed a young officer sitting in his cruiser, parked by the edge of the lot. He looked up, their eyes met, and slowly he raised his hand to his forehead, a soft, respectful salute. She didn't return it, but she did nod, not as a soldier, as a woman who had once been forgotten and chose to be unforgettable. In her apartment, late that night, Naomi stood at her desk. She unfolded the letter from the child again, then reached for a fresh sheet of paper and began writing. To the next woman in uniform, if this ever happens to you, stand still, speak clearly, don't flinch, don't scream, let them show who they are, and remember who you are. We've got you. Naomi. She labeled the envelope for whoever needs it next, and slid it into a drawer right next to her service medals. Because this was never just about her, it was about every black woman who stood tall and was still overlooked. Every soldier who followed the rules still got punished. Every girl watching from the sidelines, wondering if she'd ever be enough to be respected. Naomi's story didn't end in handcuffs. It began there. And from that stillness, a movement was born. Not loud, not flashy, not viral, but steady. Unshakable, human, and most of all,